Hi, I'm Cindy Winget, the author of The Apparition, and welcome to my channel. So this is part 3 of a book haul series because I had so many books to talk about that I had to split them up. If you missed the first 2, I'll go ahead and link them at the end of this video. So in this video, we're going to be doing all of my hardback thriller and horror books. So we're going to start with thriller, and we're going to start with my Book of the Month Club books, and there's quite a few of them, because usually I get about 3 books a month from them. So Wild Dark Shore is the first one. This one was a free one because during that month this was a Lolly winner and you were able to pick Lolly winner for free. So this one is not thriller. This is the only book in this video that isn't, but I think this is just like a literary family saga type book, but I've heard really good things. I heard that people are loving it, so I just decided to give it a chance. I honestly don't even know what this is about, but hopefully it's a good one. So this is about this family who are the caretakers of this island, and it's very isolated and the sea level keeps rising. And so eventually they're the only ones left on this little island. But one day this woman washes up on shore, and I don't know if she's a dead body or if it's just a person that they rescue. I just know that somebody washes up on shore, but I don't know that it says if they're dead or alive. So I don't know if they're trying to solve the murder of this woman to see what happened to her, or if this woman is alive and she's, bringing secrets of the outside world because they're so isolated. I'm not really sure. And then we have What Kind of Paradise, and this one is also an isolation book about this girl who is isolated with her father out in the woods. They live in this little cabin off the grid. Her mother died in a car crash, and after that the dad just took his teenage daughter and just ran away from the world basically. And so she keeps wanting to go with him on his occasional trips into town where he can get supplies, but he always says no. And so one day she just leaves because she wants to find answers for herself. And then we have Where He Left Me, and I loved this one. I've already read it and it was a 5-star read for me. This is a very, very snowy, wintry book, so I'd probably save it for winter. But this is about this woman whose husband went on a business trip and she was left alone at their house, which is pretty isolated up on this mountain. She only has like maybe one other neighbor. And while he's away, she discovers these 2 kids on the mountain, and there's a blizzard coming, and so she knows that these kids can't just stay outside because they'll freeze to death. But she's also like, where did these kids come from? Because nobody lives on this mountain, so how did they get here and why are they here? And so she doesn't really trust them, but she also doesn't want them to freeze to death, so she reluctantly takes them into her house. And then we have Dissection of a Murder. This is the newest one that I just barely got last month from Book of the Month, and this is about this woman who is a lawyer, and there was a judge who was murdered, and so because he was a judge, it's like this big huge deal and the media is all over it. And the man who was accused of doing this murder has specifically asked for our main character to be his lawyer, but yet he won't say anything to her. He just keeps silent, but he won't have any other lawyer besides her. And unfortunately for her, the prosecutor is actually her husband, and he's the one that taught her everything she knows, is kind of her mentor. And so she's like, I don't know if I can do this, And then we have The Compound, and this is a reality TV show thriller where you have this group of 19 contestants that are all part of this reality TV show. I've heard people describe it as Love Island, but I've never seen Love Island, so that doesn't really mean anything to me. But if you have seen it, then apparently that's what this is like. And you have to do certain tasks or certain challenges in order to get rewards. So like drinking water or food or bedding or whatever. So while I haven't watched Love Island specifically, I do love reality TV competition shows. And so this really does appeal to me. I don't know how that's going to correlate in book form versus watching it on Netflix, but we'll see. But it sounds like a fun time, and it sounds like the challenges that they're doing increasingly get more and more unsettling and dangerous, and they're kind of like, what is going on, So yeah, it sounds fun to me. And then we have Her Last Breath, and I absolutely love Taylor Adams, and so I'm very, very excited for this one. This is one of my most anticipated books for the year, and I want to go into it pretty blind. So the only thing I really know about this is there's this group of people that go into these caves because they're spelunkers, and they get lost, I believe, or maybe they get stuck, and it seems like there's a man in there that is seemingly stalking them or something. So it seems really fun and very also claustrophobic and terrifying at the same time. And then we have My Husband's Wife, And this is about this woman who goes for a late morning walk, and then when she returns to the house, the door is locked, and she's like, I don't remember locking it. And so she tries to use her key doesn't work. So she knocks to have her husband let her in, but it's not her husband who answers the door. It's this strange woman, and she's like, why is this woman in my house? And this woman tells her that she's her, and that her husband is our main character's husband. So now she's trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Is this woman trying to take over her life, or is she going crazy? Everybody has been loving this book, so I hope to read this one very soon. I'm very excited for it. Then we have Best Offer Wins, and this is about this woman who is trying to get the perfect house, and she just can't find one that's in their price range or ones that she likes, and she finally finds the perfect house. But unfortunately, it's a hard market, to find a house, and so she ends up befriending the owners, and she tries to manipulate them into approving her as the owner of their house. So this one, I love the premise, and I do like parts of it, but I ended up DNFing this one just because I wasn't really vibing with the main character, and the story I felt like was pretty predictable. I even looked up the ending and was like, kind of glad I didn't waste my time on it. But it's very, very short, and I have heard a lot of people have been enjoying it, so check it out for yourself. But for me, this was unfortunately a DNF. And then we have Her One Regret. And this is about this woman who is a new mother, and she confides in her friend that sometimes she wishes that she could just leave it all, and she wants to fake her own kidnapping so that she doesn't have to be a mom with the responsibilities anymore. But then one day she ends up going missing. And so her friend is like, I don't know what to do, because I don't think she would fake her own kidnapping. That just doesn't seem like her friend. But at the same time, she's like, what if she did? But she doesn't want to say anything because she doesn't want to ruin her friend's reputation. So she's trying to find out for herself what actually happened to her friend. Then we have The Endings Write Itself, and I am very, very excited for this one. It sounds so good. I loved the writing retreat, and this sounds similar to that. So we have this group of authors that are invited to go to this house of this very famous thriller author, and when they get there, they find out that this thriller author has actually passed away. And so it's the editor and the publishing house that have invited these authors, and they're like, here's the deal. He was working on his last novel, but he'd never finished it, so we want one of you guys to be able to finish his last book. If you can write the ending to this magnus opus, then you can get all this money, and we'll help revamp and we'll help relaunch your own career. And so they're in this competition to see who can best ghostwrite the ending to this famous author's novel. But the caveat is they only have 3 days in order to do it. But I'm guessing this author didn't pass away from natural causes. I'm thinking he was probably murdered. And then we have This Story Might Save Your Life. And this sounds like it's a thriller combined with a romance. So I always like a side of romance with my books, so that intrigues me. But this is about this couple who run a podcast together. They've become pretty famous, and millions of people tune into their podcast. But then one day they go missing. And so our main character, Benny, is trying to figure out what happened to this famous couple. And then we have Mad Mabel. And this is about this woman who's old now. She's in her 70s. But when she was a kid, she was accused of murdering someone. And she was considered Australia's youngest criminal, or youngest murderer, I should say. But they could never definitively prove if she had done it or not. And so now, while she's in her older years, there's this woman named Joan who she feels like has it in for her. And she has this annoying 7-year-old kid who asks a lot of questions, and so it starts getting back into the public eye about this murder that happened when she was young. And so she's trying to decide if it's finally time to tell the world what actually happened that day. And so they used to call her Mad Mabel. And so we as the reader are trying to figure out if she really was mad or if she really was a murderer or not. I like this little blurb. It says sanity is subjective. And then we have It's Not Her. And this is about this family that goes on vacation. And our main character is staying in a cabin by herself, but next door she hears screaming. And so she runs over next door and discovers that her brother and her sister-in-law are murdered. And their daughter is missing. And their son is just sleeping in his bed upstairs, unbeknownst to him, of what has happened to his family. And so now they're trying to discover if they can find this missing girl before she ends up murdered like her parents. And then the next 3 books are are from Aardvark, which is another book box subscription, starting with Party of Liars. And this is about a 16-year-old who is having a big bash for her 16th birthday party and invited all these guests. And she's rich, so they can party it up in style in this big, huge mansion. This mansion has been purportedly known to be haunted, so I don't know if there's going to be some creepy elements to this book or not. I'm guessing probably not, because it's more of a thriller than a horror. But I mean, why even have it as a haunted house though if there's not even like a trickle of something, you know? But anyway, so they're on the dance floor and they're drinking and they're having a good time, and then somebody falls from the balcony and is killed. And not everybody at this party is going to make it out alive. So this one, even though it is from the perspective of a 16-year-old, this is an adult novel. And then we have the list of suspicious things, and this is the same thing where it's from the perspective of a 12-year-old, but again, it's an adult novel. So we have this 12-year-old whose mother is sick, and her dad wants to get away from the town they are for a fresh start and to get away from these girls who have been going missing in this town, and he doesn't want his daughter to be missing or maybe even murdered. I can't remember if it said if they were missing or if they were murdered. Let me see. Okay, murdered. So it's not missing girls, it's murdered girls, and so he wants to get away from this town to where it's safer. But our main character, she doesn't want to move. She doesn't want to leave her school and her friends and her life. And so she thinks that if her and her best friend can solve these murders of these other girls, that maybe she'll get to stay because the murderer will be behind bars. And then we have Adrift, and this is about this couple who are both writers, and they live on this boat or this barge out in this river with their teenage son who gets bullied because apparently he doesn't dress well and they're poor. And so she starts to get fame and success from her writing career, and her husband is very upset about it because he's also a writer, and so he's jealous, and he moves the boat from being docked wherever it is, and they head down the river where they're very isolated, and I believe he becomes very abusive to his family. And then we have The Storm, and I've also already read this one and I really enjoyed it. And this is about this woman who runs this inn in this town where there's lots and lots of hurricanes, and there's this famous murder that took place during one of these storms, and this woman is accused of killing her lover and blaming it on the storm. And people are like, I don't buy it. I don't think it was the storm. I think she murdered him. And he's like the rich golden boy of the town, and so everybody was really upset about it. And so then like 20 years later, this journalist ends up coming to this Rosalie Inn, which our main character runs, and he wants to do a story about this murder all those years ago. And then lo and behold, the woman who is thought to be guilty of this murder shows up on her doorstep as well. And then we have Falling, and this is a thriller about this family who's on this flight, which seems normal, you know, but what they don't know is that the pilot only a couple hours earlier discovered that his family has been kidnapped. And the kidnappers tell him that if he wants to see his family alive again, he needs to crash the plane and kill everyone on it. So it kind of turns into this survival story. And then we have The Intruder. And this is about this woman who is at home and there's a storm, and she's used to hurricanes, and so it doesn't really faze her that much. But when she looks out the window, she discovers this young girl out there in the storm holding a knife and covered in blood. And so she, of course, lets her into her home because there's a storm going on and she is alone and frightened. But as you can probably guess, she starts to wonder if she should have let this girl into her house, because maybe she's not the victim. Maybe she's the perpetrator. And maybe she needs to be afraid for her own safety as different secrets come to light. And then we have Strangers in the Villa, and this is about this couple who are having marital problems. The husband has been caught cheating, and he begs her to forgive him because it was just this meaningless affair. He doesn't even like the woman. It was just a dumb indiscretion, and he begs her to please work on their marriage. So they decide to move to Spain for a fresh start, and they're renovating this new house and trying to work on their marriage. But, you know, it's very isolating. They don't know anybody in this country. They probably don't even know the language, and so it's just them, and they're already having problems. And so they meet this couple from Australia, and they don't have anywhere to go, and so they're like, oh, well, just come stay with us for a while until you figure out where you're gonna go. And our main character is very excited about this because now she has company. She has somebody else to talk to besides her cheating husband, and the husband is glad for it because he's thinking that the husband of this Australian couple can help with the work and help them with the renovations while they're there, since they're letting them stay for free, you know. But they come to find out that maybe letting this couple into their lives was maybe not the smartest thing. And then we have The Locked Ward, And this is about this girl who was adopted as a baby, but then later on she murders the biological child of the couple that adopted her, and she's sent to this psychiatric ward. But then her twin sister ends up visiting her, and this twin sister doesn't believe that she can trust her, that she probably did murder this other little girl, but she also is like, she's my sister and she's having mental problems, maybe I need to help her, because also at the psych ward, maybe they're not treating their patients very well. And so she's like, can I trust her? Can I not trust her? But should I try and free her because she's in this horrible situation? Is she actually mad? Is she not? So she's just trying to figure out what actually happened. So that's all the thrillers that I have. So we're going to be moving on to horror, again, starting with Book of the Month. There's not very many. Book of the Month doesn't typically do a whole lot of horror, but I got Play Nice by Rachel Harrison. This one, I don't have a physical copy because I actually already unhauled it because this just wasn't for me. So this is a haunted house story, but the main character was insufferable. I could not stand her, and so this just didn't work for me. And then we have You Did Nothing Wrong, and this is a story about this woman who has this autistic son, and she's just newly remarried, and she doesn't really want her new husband and her son to hang out together a whole lot because on the one hand, she doesn't know if her new husband can handle her son's tantrums, and she doesn't want her new husband to be scared away, but on the other hand, she doesn't want her son to get too close to her new husband because she's like, I only want my son to love me and no one else. She's a bit of an obsessive mother, let's just say. And then we have The Haunting of Pines Hollow, and I've also already read this one, and this is a modern retelling of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. And we have this woman who inherits this house from her grandpa, and our main character's father was accused of killing a child, and then he committed suicide, and everybody thinks that he's guilty, and he probably committed suicide because he feels guilty for what he did. But her grandfather is like the only one that always maintained that his son was innocent and wouldn't do that. And so she's kind of surprised that she inherited this house from her grandpa because they didn't really talk very much over the last 14 years. But she soon starts to realize that she believes her grandpa gave her this house so that she can discover for herself that her father was innocent. Or in her mind, she thinks she's going to find proof that her dad was guilty. And then we have Wolfworm, and this is about this woman entomologist back in the 1800s, and her father passes away, and back then women didn't have a whole lot of options as far as work and being able to take care of themselves, and so she's ecstatic when she gets this job. She thinks this is great. She goes to his manor and starts this job, and everything's copacetic, or so she thought, because I think this boss that she goes to work for, I believe he's going to end up being a sort of mad scientist, which I always love a good mad scientist tale, so I'm very excited for that. But it sounds like he has secrets that she's going to be discovering, and they are of the horrific nature. The boss that she goes to work for is the entomologist. She is just a scientific illustrator. And then we have The Possession of Alba Diaz, and this is set in the 1700s in Mexico, and there's a plague, and our main character and her family are moving to this isolated mine where they can get away from this horrific disease. But she starts sleepwalking and hallucinating and having these convulsions, and so her family starts to believe that she's possessed by the devil or by a demon. So we're going to be moving on to my aardvark pick, starting with two that I've already read. Again, we have Trad Wife, and I will be talking about this in my May wrap-up. So this is a modern retelling of the Rosemary's Baby, and I love Rosemary's Baby. It's one of my favorite classics. This is about this woman who is, as you can see from the title, a trad wife influencer, and she's one of these beige moms, and she puts her life online and she becomes part of this community. And the only thing that can make her online presence even more perfect is to have a child. In her community, it's a big deal to be a mother. And so she just really, really wants that for herself. But she's been having a hard time conceiving. But eventually, she makes this pact with this creature in the woods, and she ends up with a child. And then we have The Place Where They Buried Your Heart. And I love Christina Henry, and I'm so glad and pleased that this was a 5-star book for me. I absolutely loved it. When people talk about haunted house books and they say, the house seems sentient. It seems like its own character, you know. That is very much the case in this book. This house literally eats people and kills people when they enter. And instead of just being one person's problem, it's the whole town's problem. And they all know about this house, but there's nothing they can do about it. And so people keep going missing and keep being killed. And then we have the Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre. And as you can tell from the cover and the title, this is a slasher that takes place in a retirement home. That's really all I know about it. That's really all I need to know about it. I loved Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi, and I'm excited to read something else from him, and I've heard very good things about this. And then we have Japanese Gothic. And before I got this from Aardvark, I actually didn't realize that this is the same author that did Bad Eater, so that's intriguing. I haven't read Bad Eater yet, but everybody seems to love it, so I'm excited to have something else from this author. And I love Gothic novels. So this synopsis is a little bit wacky, a little bit confusing, but it sounds like it's a double timeline, and this woman moves into this house in Japan, and she starts seeing this old, like, samurai, I believe, and thinks that it's a ghost. And then we have the perspective from the samurai living back in ancient Japan. And the interesting thing is, I believe this samurai is a woman, which is unusual. But anyways, their lives start to interconnect and intertwine in increasingly scary ways, I guess. I know this this synopsis does not do it credit. I'm sure it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit confusing, but people seem to have been really loving this one, so I'm excited to get to it. And then we have No More Burning, and this is about this girl and her brother who run away from home. I believe their parents are probably abusive, and so they run away and they hear about this place called Nowhere that's supposed to be a sanctuary for runaways. So they go on this journey to find this land, but when they get there, things aren't as great as they seem. I'm thinking that this book is going to have cultish vibes, and I've heard that it's a mix between Peter Pan and Lord of the Flies, so that kind of intrigues me but also kind of confuses me. And then we have This House Will Feed, and this takes place in the 1800s during the Irish potato famine. And in this book, our main character is working at a workhouse, which is very dangerous at the time, and the workers didn't really have any rights, and it was just a terrible place to work. And Lady Catherine comes and tells her that if she comes with her and pretends to be her daughter, Wilhelmina, so that she can get her widow's pension, then she will free her from the workhouse because she'll have a different job to do. Plus, she'll have some money in her pockets, and she'll even give her some land. And back then, only land was everything. But as you've guessed, as she enters this manor with Catherine, not everything is as it seems, and eerie and frightening things begin to happen and secrets come to light. And then all the rest of these are ones that I just bought on my own. So this one is a little bit more fantasy based, but it has ghosts in it, and that's House Safer. And I have already read this one, and so that's why I say it is a little bit more fantastical. I was hoping it was going to be a little bit more gothic than it ended up being, but it does have ghosts in it, but they're not particularly creepy ghosts. There is a malevolent spirit. He's not really scary, but he is a bad ghost. He's actually the ghost of Bluebeard, and so our main character can see the ghosts of his wives that he has been killing, and she is a ghost tour of this house where he lived, and then she ends up going to another house where he was with one of his other wives, and she's trying to stop his spirit from killing anybody else. So I say I bought the rest of these on my own, but I guess this one I didn't buy. My daughter brought it home for me from the Free Little Library, and it's called The Once and Future Witches. I have heard of this one and seen it around, but it's so huge, and I was afraid it was going to be more fantasy based, and so I didn't ever pick it up. But then my daughter brought it home from the Free Little Library and was like, "Mom, you like witch books? I found this for you." So I guess I'll give it a try. But this is about this woman living in modern times, and she doesn't believe in witches or anything, but you know, she's heard about the Salem witch trials and all this stuff, and she gets involved with these three other ladies that seem very witch-like, and they're all suffragettes together, and they're thinking that these charms and spells might be able to help them to get the women the right to vote. So I don't really know much about it other than that, but again, it's so huge, so I'm kind of intimidated by it. And then these next two I've already read. We have A box full of darkness. I actually did a whole vlog about this book, so if you want to see it, then I would encourage you to go check it out. But this is the newest release by Simone St. James, and I really loved this one. This was a 5-star read for me, and this is about this group of 3 siblings who go back to their childhood home because one of them can actually see ghosts, and she sees the ghost of their brother Ben, and he had gone missing when they were children and presumed dead, and she sees the ghost of this brother saying that she needs to go back to their childhood home. And so she gathers her other siblings whom she hasn't talked to in years and was like, hey, Ben is calling us back home, we need to go. And so we get the perspective of each sibling, which is really nice, and they each have their own horrific things that they're going through. So we have the one that can see ghosts, but then we also have her sister who keeps having this recurring nightmare all throughout her life. And then their brother was convinced that Ben was taken by aliens because he saw a really bright light the night that he went missing, and so he's been into UFOs and trying to find sightings and stuff like that. And they haven't really been communicating with each other about all the stuff that they've been going through, but now that they're all together in this childhood home, they're starting to piece together what may have happened to their brother. And then we have One Yellow Eye, and this is a zombie novel, but it's not your typical zombie novel where people just get eaten and ripped apart. This is more scientific based, and so this woman, she is a scientist, and she has made it her mission to find a cure for this zombie plague. And because zombies are, pretty slow and shambling and all of that, the military were able to eradicate all of the zombies, and so people think they're kind of safe. I mean, you always have that fear that this plague's going to start again, and the scientists are scrambling to find a vaccination, including our main character. But what nobody knows is that her husband, who had caught this disease, didn't die like she said he did. She actually locked him in her apartment because she loves him, he's the love of her life, and she's convinced that she will find the cure and she will be able to save her husband. So this one is a lot more scientific because it's about a scientist trying to find the cure and doing, everything she can to cure her husband. And so it's also a story about grief because her husband has come to this disease and she's not sure if she's going to be able to save him. But I thought this was fantastic. I loved this book. I thought it was really, really good. And I thought that the disease, especially a certain element to the disease, was extremely unique and fascinating. And then we have The Unseen by Ania Allborn, and this is about this family who adopts this child, but as soon as this child becomes a member of their family, things start to happen and they start wondering if maybe they should not have invited this child into their home after all. And then we have The Cold House, which is a horror novella, and once again, I don't have a physical copy because I already unhauled it. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't absolutely great either, so that's why I got rid of it. But I don't want to say too much because it is so short. So this is about this girl who is marrying this man, and she goes to this isolated manor to meet his family for the first time. But when she gets there, she starts to discover secrets about this family and that maybe they're not good people. So I don't want to say too much more because it is so short. But again, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't anything that blew my socks off either. And then we have The Glowing Hours, and this is about this girl who comes over from India to England to find her brother so that she can hand him a letter of inheritance, and then she plans to go back home to India, but she gets trapped there and she can't find passage back to India and she can't find her brother, and so she seeks refuge at this boarding house for Indian maids. And so she finds a job with the Shelleys, so with Mary and Percy Shelley, and she ends up being their maid, and she goes with them and a couple of friends like Lord Byron and with Mary's stepsister, I believe it is, and they flit off to Geneva for the summertime, and she goes with them. And as Mary Shelley begins writing her famous story about Frankenstein, this maid in this house is discovering that the house that they're staying in may be haunted because the walls breathe and things are moved around and portraits move and different things. And so she's starting to think that the house is haunted, and not only that, but that the Shelleys and or their guests have secrets that they're hiding. So I love Frankenstein. It's one of my absolute favorite Gothic classic novels of all time, and I will pretty much pick up anything that has to do with Frankenstein, so I'm looking forward to this. And then we have The Hong Kong Widow, and this is set in 1950s China, and we have this girl who is a medium, and there was this man who pretty much ruined her life, and she wants to seek revenge on him, and so she finally gets the opportunity to do so because there's this competition to find 6 mediums who over 6 nights are going to perform 6 seances in this haunted house. And at the end of the competition, they'll receive a cash prize and all of this stuff, but she's not interested in the money. She's not interested in the competition itself. She's only there because the man that ruined her life is the one that is holding this competition, and so she's there to seek her revenge. So I want this to be about that night and about these seances, but I think it's actually mostly takes place in modern times, and it is modern times, 1950s, but I meant it's in like 20 years after the events, and she's like reflecting back on it. So I'm hoping we get some flashbacks, because otherwise I'm going to be kind of disappointed. And then we have The Cut, and this is about a haunted hotel, and our main character, she just either inherits this hotel or she buys this hotel and trying to make a go of it, but strange things start to happen to her patrons at this hotel. But I'm thinking it's not a ghost tale, because we have this little tentacle coming out of the drain. I'm thinking this is either a creature feature or maybe a cosmic horror. And then we have The Devil Aspect, and this takes place in 1935 Czechoslovakia, and we have this man who is this psychiatrist, and he goes to this asylum out on this mountain, and they only have 6 patients at this asylum, and they're these famous, or infamous I should say, murderers that are too dangerous to be around people. And so our main character, he believes that he has come up with some kind of psychological or scientific explanation for these 6 murderers to have done what they did, and that they might have these similarities. And so he calls it the devil aspect, and he's trying to see if all of these patients have this same like neurological disease or whatever. But while he's trying to do that, there is a murder by somebody who is a copycat of Jack the Ripper, known as Leather Apron, and the detectives get into contact with our psychiatrist main character to see if this devil aspect is something that is inherent in this new serial killer as well. And then we have Hyde, and this is about a man named Edward Hyde, and he is a detective, and only his doctor knows his secret, where he has like these vivid dreams, but he also has amnesia and moments in time when he can't remember where he was or what he was doing due to some kind of severe neurological condition. And the only other thing I know about this book is it's supposed to have like Celtic rites and Scottish mythology and folklore. And I love a good retelling of a classic, so I'm excited to read these 2 books by this author, because this is from the same author as The Devil's Aspect. And then we have Dead First, and this is by Johnny Copton, who also did The Spite House, which I enjoyed. And it says that this is part noir detective story mixed with atmospheric horror, which sounds good to me. And this is about this man who cannot die, and so he hires this woman to see if she can figure out why this is happening. Is it a curse? Is it a scientific medical thing? He doesn't know, and so he proves it to her. I don't know what he does. He like blows his own head off or something and proves that he cannot in fact die. And so our main character reluctantly tries to help him, and she's only doing so because he's blackmailing her with her own secret that she doesn't want to be exposed for. And then we have 13 Months Haunted, and I was really excited for this one because of the nostalgia around it. This takes place during the Y2K scare in 2000. And so all of the teenagers at the time are very excited about technology and computers and these new AOL and Napster stuff. But our main character is a school librarian, and she notices this little 8th grader, and she's kind of weird and bizarre, and so she doesn't have very many friends, and especially because her mother comes with her to school every day and sits by her, which is just weird. And so our main character feels bad for her because she's an outcast because of this. and she kind of wants to take her under her wing. And in addition to her mother coming to school with her, she's not like the other kids that are all excited about new technology. She won't even touch a computer or go near any kind of technology. And then we have House of Monstrous Women, and this takes place in the Philippines. And our main character is invited to her childhood best friend's house, whom she hasn't seen in years. And her friend is like, come to my house and we'll play games like we used to. And so she goes to play these games, but because they're adults now, I think there's some kind of cash prize or some kind of reason why she would play this game, even if it got increasingly scary or dangerous. So her brother is also summoned to this house to play this game. And so she mostly goes in order to talk to her brother because she hasn't seen him in a while and she needs to talk to him. But this game isn't as wholesome as she initially thought. It's not child's game anymore, and so she is hoping to get this reward to help her and her brother in some way. I'm not really sure what that is yet. Haven't read it yet, so I'll find out when I do. But people in the town say that her childhood friend is a witch and that her family has a curse on it. And then we have Widow's Point by Richard Chismire, and this is a haunted house tale as well that takes place at a lighthouse. And then we have Slashed Beauties, and this takes place in the 1800s, and it's told in two different timelines. So we have our modern heroine who is trying to track down these waxed figures. There's 3 of them, and I think she's under some kind of curse or something. And so she thinks if she can find all 3 of these waxed figures, then she can break the curse and move on with her life. And then we also get the timeline of the 3 women whom these waxed figures are made for, or made to look like, I should say. And apparently these waxed figures come alive and murder men who have wronged them in the past. So, this has some feminist body horror, but it also has the Victorian Gothicness to it, and so I think it will be a fun combination. And then we have Weavenshaw, and this one might be more fantasy, kind of like the House of Safer, where it has ghosts and maybe a gothic atmosphere, but I think it is actually a fantasy, especially because it's part of a trilogy, and usually when it's part of a series, it's not horror. Most horror are standalones, but this is about a girl who can see ghosts, and she hates it and she doesn't want people to know about it until her brother falls ill and she doesn't have any money or any way to purchase the expensive medicine that he needs to help him. So she goes to what's called the Saint of Silence, who deals in secrets, and so she does have her secret of being able to talk to ghosts. So she tries to make a deal with this entity, and in exchange for the medicine, she will give him her secret. But it sounds like she might fall in love with this entity or god or whatever you want to call it. And in exchange for the medicine, this entity wants her to find the ghost of the last Lord of Revenshaw. And she's not really sure why he wants this information, but she's willing to do anything to help her brother. So that's it. That's all the books I have to talk about. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up to let me know. Please subscribe to my channel if you feel so inclined, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.